Good afternoon and welcome to Business Unusual here on Newsroom Africa Channel 405 with me, Ayabonga Tawe. And as we do every Friday, it's Mama Made It Friday. Today, we're going to be bringing to you the journey of Veli Ngubane, the co-founder and group managing director at advertising and marketing agency Avatar. And he takes us through his journey and some of his thoughts about the state of play within the industry. We'll also be taking a look at some of the top business stories that are moving markets at the end of this work week. But my colleague Tami Ngubeni is standing by with your main news.
Thank you, Ayabonga. Certainly looking forward to today's edition of Business Unusual. But first up, let's take a look at today's top political and social stories. The two alleged kidnappers of Amy Lee de Jager have been denied bail, while a third accused has been granted bail of 25,000 rand. Former President Jacob Zuma's efforts to avoid prosecution suffer a blow in the Pietermaritzburg High Court as his leave and his application for stay is dismissed. And staying in KwaZulu-Natal, the former eThekwini Mayor Zandile Gumede is currently in court for allegedly violating her bail conditions. The two alleged kidnappers of Amy Lee de Jager have been denied bail, while a third accused was granted a bail of 25,000 rand. Tarina Human and Peter van Sale will remain behind bars, while Letitia Nell has been granted a bail of 25,000 rand. The trio are accused of kidnapping Amy Lee de Jager at Law School Kollega Park in September. The accused tried to convince the court that they are eligible for bail. Now, in their affidavits, which were read out in court, they said they planned to plead not guilty. Former President Jacob Zuma's application for a permanent stay of prosecution has been dismissed by the High Court in Pietermaritzburg. Zuma's legal team's reliance on the National Prosecuting Authority's 15-year delay to prosecute, as well as allegations of political interference in the case against the former president, have failed. A full bench at the Pietermaritzburg High Court has this morning ruled that Zuma must stand trial for his alleged offences. Earlier this year, the former president applied for his case to be permanently halted. He is currently facing charges of corruption, money laundering, as well as racketeering related to the multi-billion rand arms deal. Zuma's lawyers claim that he does not have the money to fund his corruption trial defense, but the state security, or rather the state, has successfully argued that Zuma has no evidence to prove his claims of political meddling and will now proceed with a prosecution after stating that they are indeed ready for trial.
The application brought by Jacob Gedehlegisa Zuma under case number CCD 30/2018 is dismissed with such costs to include those consequent upon employment of 2 counsel. And 6, the application brought by Thales South Africa Pty Ltd under case number D12763/2018 is dismissed with such costs to include those consequent upon employment of 2 counsel. I hand down the judgment.
There's been mixed reaction to the adverse ruling against Jacob Zuma, with some of the former president's supporters expressing disappointment, while others say that this was to be expected. Earlier, the Pietermaritzburg High Court dismissed Zuma's application for a permanent stay of prosecution on corruption charges.
Like anybody who came here to support Ubaba Msholozi, we are disappointed, I must say, because there is what we never expected legally. But on the other side, you would expect something like this, especially when you are dealing with a case of a profile person like this, Ubaba Msholozi. We are disappointed. We thought the court would look at it the way it was said last time, because we still maintain that his rights are violated. You can't be having one case by the same state for 14 years, and we can say there is justice in that. So we are disappointed. But on Tuesday, because the case is sitting on Tuesday. On Tuesday we are coming. We'll never tire up to give him support.
We just came here to support our former president, not because we're expecting something really extra, because it was going to be a surprise to the judge verdict to support Nxamalala. So therefore, we came here to prepare that actually we are just come here to support him. But ours is for next week for the trial. Today was just to come and support him, give him that moral support. Otherwise, we knew what is going to happen.
No, we're not surprised at all. As Black First Land First, we expected this. The position that we take is that the courts have decisively chosen the side of white monopoly capital. They become the defenders of white monopoly capital. Monopoly capital are those who own the means of production, they own the land, the banks, the economy, the mines, white people. And these courts have decided to protect them. And anyone who's seen as a threat, and President Zuma is seen as a threat because he's the father of radical economic transformation. The agenda there, we believe, is to intimidate people into submission. If you really want to fight corruption, you should have President Ramaphosa here, because we know that the public protector has found that, in fact, over 400 million was used to buy a conference. We have a president who's bought.
Former eThekwini Mayor Zandile Gumede is currently appearing in court today for allegedly violating her bail conditions. The former mayor is believed to have violated her bail conditions by failing to inform the police that she had moved from her Umhlanga home, which was the property she supplied as her residential address when she made her bail application. On Thursday, the Hawks and the Asset Forfeiture Unit conducted several raids at Gumede's homes, as well as homes of her co-accused. Luxury vehicles and an undisclosed amount of money were seized during the raids. Gumede, who was removed from office in June, is facing charges of corruption, money laundering, as well as racketeering. The Hawks were notified that she had terminated the lease and had left the rented property. Let's take a look at our top business stories for the day, as well as the profile on our Mama I Made It candidate. Over to Ayabonga Kawe for Business Unusual.
Thank you very much for that, Tommy. We now get into our Mama Made It Friday, and we'll do that a bit later. But first, we take a look at today's top business stories that are moving markets at the end of this work week. Now, mobile operator Cell C has put core parts of its business up for sale as it struggles with a debt burden of 9 billion rand and deepening losses. Cell C's fiber optic network and base of build customers are up for grabs, according to people familiar with this particular matter. Now, the carrier has also embarked on talks to sell access to some of its wireless frequencies to larger rival MTN Group, as said some of the people who asked not to be named, as some of these plans are still private. Now, this asset sale is said to have attracted the interests of many telecoms players, including MTN, Vodacom Group and Telkom. And to talk through this particular story and many others, I'm joined in studio by analyst and chairman of the Woodford Group, Adil Ntshabeleng. Adil, welcome once again, my brother. How are you?
Good, very well. Thank you so much.
What do you make of this? I mean, I think there's been not only this spectacular fall of dominoes within Cell C and the debt burden that they have, but it's had a massive impact on even the likes of Blue Label Telecoms, one of their major investors.
Absolutely. I think the way Cell C has been actually positioned was it looked at a very short-term market where it made a lot of gains in terms of customer acquisition, but didn't really have traction because prices fell. I mean, LTE, which is the current product that they've been offering to the various sort of customers that they have on board, including my broadband and the others, has now actually lost traction in terms of the market. Now you're looking at 5G, you're looking at options whereby the network needs to be stabilizing. And they haven't been able to cut across in terms of becoming sort of a fixed broadband operator on a mobile basis. So they are struggling with regards to the fall of shares, fall of sales. They are struggling in terms of maintaining the service, and that is why they are recalling the service. They say that they can't continue supplying the service again, because it hasn't been profitable for them, and it's just becoming a burden to carry it. There's a lot of cost, associated to it, but there's really very little that they're getting back in return. So they are pulling back on that particular service, and they're saying that they're going to look at a different model and service offering.
Yeah. How attractive would their existing customer base and even their wireless frequencies be to a potential suitor?
Look, in this case, if anybody had to actually acquire, a mobile telecom operator, I wouldn't really recommend an acquisition at this stage because there is so much of changes and there's so much of technology shift and movement. You wouldn't be making a best decision I mean, you have Telkom right now competing heavily on the fixed line as well as on the mobile aspect of
And
it.
data, yeah.
They are offering a huge amount of savings and discounts on data. The beauty part of this, where you can port your SIM at any given time within 30 days of porting, has given customers a really flexible environment whereby they're just moving across the best network that provides them the best service. So at this case, companies such as MTN, Vodacom are still the dominant players. Cell C has always been the limping partner in the mobile telecom operator. One, because there's been so much of changes on Cell C's strategy. If Cell C played the price market and could service and provide, new customers coming into the market with regards to their falling voice revenue, and they could have focused on data and data offerings and services, they would have done very well. When they cut their WhatsApp free services, they lost quite a lot of customers because people are looking for value without having to spend a lot. And yes, you know it, in the data segment, it's your daily consumables such as your social media, Instagram, your WhatsApp, that actually drives people to stay on the network. So right now, there isn't really much available for people to find attractive within the Cell C bouquet. The adverts have gone down. There's not really much in terms of marketing done. The communication aspect of it is confused. We don't know who's the Cell C CEO, brand ambassador, personality. Even Trevor Noah left. He was one of the key anchors.
Wow. So you were talking earlier on that it's probably not the best time for an acquisition now because of the technological change. But would that apply to a China Mobile as well? Because, I'm sitting here thinking that the big transition network-wise now is this transition to fifth generation technology, and the Chinese are miles ahead of anybody else when it comes to that. And we heard rumors earlier on in the week about China Mobile potentially being a suitor here.
Hopefully, if China Mobile acquires the particular asset, they're going to have to spend a lot of money to turn it around. They have the technology, which is brilliant. They'll have the 5G advancement, which is now going to still be a contestation. Remember, 5G spectrum has not as yet been released.
Sure.
There is still going to be auction chunks. That is going to happen in the broadband space. So at this stage, whoever acquires a telco has to look at one thing. How are you going to stabilize your data services? How are you going to make sure that your network coverage is actually brilliant? Because Cell C had a current crisis with regards to accessibility on network. It had a good prices at some given point, but when you step out of the main cities, the metros, you lose your connectivity completely. You are actually off the network. So they haven't really been able to sort out their tethering issues. And not only that, they haven't been able to partner with other networks in terms of literally doing the hopping over of various networks, still on a Cell C customer base. So China Mobile, if they want to acquire, Cell C, it's a good call. The company is going through sales losses, and they are looking at scaling down. Yeah. So the price should be good in that sense.
So is Blue Label any clearer now about their books? Are they going to come to the market anytime soon and say, hey guys, here are our results? Because we do know much of the delays in their results had to do with some of the issues here at Cell C.
At Blue Label, I don't really think they will even be able in a position to can declare what they've been doing. Because Blue Label, as you know, is a service provider partner to all of the network providers. It works with Cell C, it works, and it's a vendor for airtime.
But it's also an investor in Cell C.
As well as in Cell C, yeah. So in that case, will they be able to say, listen guys, this is where we're sitting and this is how we feel? If they are smart, I would say they must pay a premium on selling of the network operator's license. But in terms of the customer base, really there isn't much of a customer base because Cell C is not much of a fixed network, fixed contract basis where there is a book going forward. So you're buying good value, you're buying good name, you're buying goodwill, and it's that goodwill that you must take from a network operator's point of view and then make magic out of it. China, if they come in, I can assure you, it's going to be hectic competition. Chinese are big on volume. They're going to be literally unleashing a lot of volume, which we hope in the data space, it will be incredible. And that's what customers want.
Okay, let's pause there for a second, Adil, and take a quick break. And when we come back, we bring you more business news. And do stay tuned to us here on Business Unusual, right here on Newsroom Africa, channel 405. Welcome back. We're still taking a look at your top business stories that are moving markets at the tail end of this week, and I'm still in conversation with analyst and chairman at Woodford Group, Adil Ntshabeleng. We're now going to take a look at a story here, Adil, remaining in the technology sector. EOH, we know that company has come into some trouble here, ICT Group, and they had issues there with their license to provide support and service infrastructure for Microsoft here in South Africa after the flag was raised about some of the contracts they had with the Department of Defense. It seems now that the probe into 1.2 billion rand worth of suspicious transactions has been substantially completed, and quite clear that a number of governance failings and wrongdoing has been found here, and there might even be some criminal action following from this probe.
Yeah. Unfortunately, with EOH, they have been involved in some quite dubious and some people say underhanded transactions, whereby they've been doing all sorts of influencing of deals. And it's
Mostly
not
in
the
the
only
public
one.
sector.
In the public sector, their most bulk is sitting in the public sector, where particularly their health portfolio. They've been doing quite a sizable buying up of various companies, acquiring and doing a whole lot of changeover of management, restructuring of the product. But at the same time, they've been on an aggressive acquisition of tender-based books in government. And doing that, meaning they've had to have favorable sort of conditions and people that they could link up with. There's been a lot of reports, this is not the only one, that EOH has been found wanting in a sense that they've been found to be actually influencing the tender processes as well as tender outcomes within some of these deals and transactions. So it's not really a cautious environment from an EOH point of view. And I don't think they have been able to keep a clean slate. They might have thought networking, having friends, as well as doing what the normal empowerment companies do in this case, whereby they appoint a government relations officer who actually goes and builds relationships with government personnel and executives, was something that is favorable for business. But now they're actually coming in a lot of scrutiny. So this kind of penalties are going to be coming on them. It's going to be really quite hard.
It's quite interesting because I think, when they appointed Stephen van Coller, there was this sense that, coming from MTN as he did, that he would be able to come in and clean up some of the mess here and give some signals to the marketplace that, this company was on the mend, at least from a governance and internal controls perspective. But what has happened is the opposite. We've seen a slew of bad news here. And, if you're sitting in a supply chain function across the government now, you probably wouldn't want to be touching EOH with a barge pole.
Absolutely. I mean, there's quite a lot of problems that they're sitting with right now with regards to all the penalties. Even the new CEO, Stephen, he has not been able to turn around. The board has been sort of much more upbeat on saying we want a zero tolerance on corruption and zero tolerance of influences. But, I mean, in the business that they're involved in, at some point, we have to come and actually draw a straight line on the, on the road and saying, guys, how do big companies influence business and government? EOH is sitting with a large book, and that book, if any competitor was to do analysis on that book and saying, how did these guys arrive at the point where they have acquired some of these transactions and contracts, you would find a lot of discrepancies. So they are sitting with a lot of flag based on that aspect of it. And the markets are not quite reacting quite well. As you can see here, there's been a huge price knock in terms of the stock price. There's been a huge fluctuation in terms of their earnings. It's looking down to making sure that EOH's new board, which has adopted a new zero policy towards bribery and corruption. I mean, where do you find a company making a board decision clearly saying that we are now no longer interested in bribery and corruption? Which means there's been a previous
They were doing it.
practices.
So you don't make that kind of declaration.
You can't do a board resolution of that nature unless they know that they come from a history of undue influence. I wouldn't say they bribed anybody. I wouldn't say they were involved in corrupt activities. But from an analyst point of view, you would just say,
you're not saying it. The board
undue
is saying
influence
it,
could be.
The board is saying
level.
it.
So when the board actually states this kind of things, and Stephen van Coller is actually, they said that they've identified 1.2 billion in suspicious payments at the company. I mean, how do you pay 1.2 billion on suspicious transaction? Not 1.2 million. Billion. Not 120 million. 1.2 billion. So they've been giving out handouts. They've been paying for lunches.
In return for work,
They've been paying for apartments and cars and other things that we can't even quantify at the stage. If it was bribe packs like Bosasa used to do, I mean, it's a completely different thing. But in this case, it's 1.2 billion. So it's one of those things that one has to wonder.
Talking about that, and even that period, I guess, of state market relations, we know that the whistleblower went to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission as well.
Yeah.
And one would wonder what impact this is going to have on the back of us hearing yesterday that the Guptas effectively have been sort of redlined in the U.S. Do we foresee something similar here on the part of EOH where this might be a ban that says any American company that does work with these guys on the back of the information that they've had about the Microsoft deal might be redlined as well?
Possibly so, because of the U.S. Securities, doesn't really play games when it comes to these issues. When they redline you, it means that if you actually ever do business in this country and you're a company executive, when you get to the U.S., you get arrested immediately. There's not even a negotiation on it. I mean, they did it previously, if you remember, there was a point where De Beers, executives and directors, could not enter the U.S. market. They actually had to go back and make a massive settlement with regards to the diamond trading, where they were regarded as a monopoly and that they had cornered over the market. But then in Clinton's time, that whole issue was resolved when actually De Beers went in and said, listen, gentlemen, we're not a global monopoly. We are playing in various regions. Of course, yes, most of the diamonds which are coming out of South Africa, and we happen to be one of the biggest traders and largest people. So they made a settlement on those bases. But the U.S., when it comes to securities exchange rules, they are not negotiable. They are very hard, and they push a hard line on this thing. So if these guys on EOH find themselves on the wrong footing, and it is proved that the current licensing process that they acquired with Microsoft had issues in relation to how it was acquired, they're going to be blacklisted, and they are not going to be entering the market. And the worst part of it is we might see the end of EOH.
And that's a sad state of play, especially in a sector like the ICT one, where we probably haven't seen as much a black operational companies as we would have liked, I guess, 25 years from 1994.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, I don't know why. I mean, ICT is such a very vibrant, young, dynamic, innovative space, and you still have the old guys. I mean, guys from EOH are still ex-military guys. Yeah. They're coming out of the ex-apartheid forces. They're coming out of the ex-apartheid economy, and all that they did is they just transferred the skills, the knowledge, and the know-how, picked up a couple of very influential black executives, put them on board and said, guys, let's go and take over these things. And they went into segments. I mean, they went into energy, they went into defense, they went into health, they went into treasury. Wherever you find the footprint of government, there would always be an EOH suite of some products and services that they're offering at an ICT level. What does that say to us as a country? We are not empowering young ICT companies. I mean, you would not find in this country and the likes of a black organization at the EOH level that is listed, that has an opportunity to be growing forward. Most of the ICT companies have actually just crunched, and we're sitting at a point where they are not really even significant relevance of having ICT players who are black-owned.
Look, let's hope the likes of Adapt IT can fill that vein, or even the likes of the Squidnets in the world, especially with the Internet of Things, but only time will tell.
Absolutely.
I want us to take a look at Eskom for a second here.
Yeah.
Now, they are taking NERSA to court because they're saying, hey, you guys haven't given us the kind of tariff we were looking for here, and a tariff that at least would allow us, in the minimum, to recover some of the costs of provision.
Look, the tariff crisis within Eskom has been ongoing. I still don't understand why you have a regulator that crunches numbers. It says if you've made profitability, we reverse your revenue scale. We say, look, use your profits in order to subsidize a tariff. On the same time, they're saying Eskom should be competitive, should be able to survive on its own, and should recover. If Eskom does not go in and get a bit of a favorable tariff, it doesn't have to be a tariff that is going to be killing to consumers. Remember, right now, in order to go back to maintenance and refurbish the current plants that they're sitting with, you need a lot of capital. That capital is not available. The only way Eskom gets in cash is through tariff. So they can only go in and apply for a better tariff. The other thing is, they haven't been able to say, look, we have a particular tariff, which is an IPP tariff, which is not beneficial to Eskom's tariff basket because they are getting that particular allowance at a loss. So why can't they negotiate and saying, instead of us getting a particular loss tariff, literally isolate IPP's tariff, put it aside, let it become an independent treasury. If they want to trade on that particular tariff, they can use that, and make sure that you protect Eskom, because Eskom right now is buying a tariff at a higher price, selling it at a loss. The marginal losses that are currently incurred in that particular tariff has to be passed over onto the revenue
So
board.
are you suggesting a deal? I mean, if I understand you properly here.
Yeah.
Because Eskom buys energy from the IPPs, even the price at which they buy that should be regulated by NERSA.
Absolutely. Why would I buy, a vehicle at 200 rands, and the operator who allows me to get onto the road, he says only cars, the only chance is for you to recover the 200,000 rand, we will give you 100,000 rand operational revenue in order to make your sales. So what are you doing? I mean, I'm going to take a knock of 100,000. what am I going to fill it with? I have to take it from somewhere. And that is why Eskom has to dip into its other tariffs, which are subsidized by coal, nuclear, as well as the other profit-making centers. And they have to take from there in order to make up for the losses. So that is how the whole books are set up. And nobody explains it to the regulator to say, we are taking a massive knock with regards to one particular tariff, which is not even generating electricity. Other countries, by the way, have a green tariff. You know, if you want to pay for a green tariff, you would select in your municipality, whoever you're buying from, to say, between this time and that time, I want to support and I want to give value to a green tariff. So I would buy a green tariff, which means you'll be buying on a higher value. And then how do you recoup your green tariff rebate? You will get a rebate through other tax systems within an economy. That hasn't happened in South Africa. You're still currently regulating all tariffs on a single base level. Eskom applies for a particular tariff, it gets that tariff, it has to make sure that that tariff is applied on all its energy sources.
Which
so they
come
don't
in at
look
different cost.
Exactly. One cost is higher, the other one is marginal, the other one is subsidizing all other tariffs, which is particularly nuclear, because they are getting most of the electricity for free at about 20 cents. Coal comes in at about 30, 36 cents, and then you have now the shooting up of the current windows of renewables coming at 64 for the last bid window 4, but the 1 to 3 bid window came in at average of 22 cents, up to 5 rands. So there's a marginal difference. You know, I mean, I like what Ndlozi said when he called it the perennial problem at Eskom, and he was asking the deputy president.
Yeah, I think those power purchasing agreements are going to require a lot more scrutiny.
And NERSA should take the responsibility, because NERSA decides the success and decides the failure of Eskom. If they don't allow Eskom to actually be able to spend its revenue in terms of income in order to capitalize itself, you will not have power plants maintained. That is why we had load shedding, because they have to take money and pay other service providers unnecessarily so.
Okay, and Adil, I think if you add to that the municipal debt burden, then you have the makings of a perfect storm. But we'll have to leave it there, my brother.
Absolutely.
Always a pleasure catching up with you. That there was Adil Nchabeleng. He is an analyst and also the chairman at the Whitford Group, speaking to us and helping us take stock of the big business news stories at the end of this particular week. Let's take a brief break now, and when we come back, we go into Mama Made It Friday, and we'll be catching up with Veli Ngubane, who's the co-founder and group managing director at marketing agency Avatar. Welcome back. It's Mama Made It Friday here on Business Unusual. And for this edition, I'm joined in studio by a strategist turned creative. Veli Ngubane is the co-founder and group managing director at Avatar, which is a full-service marketing agency. And he also serves on the advisory board as a chairman at Red and Yellow School. And he also sits at the IAB's Transformation and Education Council. And is also called upon frequently to judge many industry awards such as the Loeries, Apex, Bookmarks, among many others, and also named in this year's Mail and Guardian Top 200 South Africans, not this year, but in 2017, I should rather say. And it takes us through his own journey this afternoon for our Mama Made It segment. Vil,
Bob,
how are you, my brother?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Let's maybe start off from the beginning, long before Avatar, because one would think that the seeds that created this particular full-service agency came much, much earlier.
Yeah. Very early. I think for my earliest memory, I've always been an entrepreneur. From Estradini, seeing how we can play soccer for money, hiring out my bicycle. So it's always been in me. And there's been a lot of failures, a lot of businesses that I've set up, that I've sold. So I think a lot of people know the Avatar story because it's a public success. But in any entrepreneur's journey, there has to be a lot of lessons before you get to success,
Let's talk about the failures. I mean, often people who sit where you're sitting now are very quick to talk about the successes, and it makes for a very nice segment. But I want to hear about, a little bit about some of the failures and what you learned in that process.
I think as you go, sometimes ideas sound good in your head, and sometimes the market is not ready, or you haven't really refined your product enough. So I've had a lot of thoughts where it sounded good, and I've gone on to try implement things, and they just haven't worked out. So, but those failures teach you One, you must learn very quickly not to repeat it. But I think it's all in the course of being an entrepreneur, you know. Fail quick and learn even quicker.
And of course, fail forward as well.
Yeah,
And, your failing forward got you, of course, to the point now where you've got a multi-service and multi-platform agency that you're running and in Avatar. Let's talk about the early days there. Much has been made about 2,000 Rand in startup capital, and now close on to a turnover of just over 200 million.
So I talk a lot about the creative economy. You know, I think it's one part of the economy that can really liberate and create employment.
Sure.
So we started there. You know, the barrier to entry is not trucks, it's not tractors. It's actually how you think. You know, and I usually say, we've got it. We've got the insights. We've got the market. So we converted that into a need in the industry. If you know anything about advertising, it's really an untransformed industry that lacks the insight. And it's quite weird because the majority of the customers are black. So we saw that gap and we started converting our thinking and making brands more relevant in the consumer's lives. So that is really what Avatar and the space that Avatar plays in, you know. And it came at a stage where my business partner, Zibusiso, is more digital and it came at a point where, and I come from above the line media, it came at a point where what's killing what? Is technology killing advertising? Is there still needed for a TV ad? Then we came up with something that is integrated, that is both digitally focused and also uses above-the-line medium to get the communication.
Yeah. And what are some of the other interesting campaigns that you've done, which for you have said, I'm actually on the right track here? This campaign shows me and what I've learned and the insights and the value we've added to a client shows that we're actually on the right path.
I guess H&M comes to mind. We were brought on.
Crisis management?
No, really we were the first to shoot a campaign on African soil. So they came to us with insights and said, you know, we want a local agency to give us the insights for a campaign. And we shot the H&M campaign, so much so that we were invited to Sweden to talk on diversity and insights and stuff like that. So that is one campaign that I think, besides just the creativity around it, actually changed a brand that was, at that particular point, very negatively perceived by the market to a more positive outlook. So that's one campaign.
Some interesting things have happened, certainly, on that brand. I mean, if I think about the store sort of flash mobs, you know, not so long ago, to how it's perceived in, you know, the public discourse now.
I think they invested a lot. They took it seriously. They took diversity seriously, and they wanted to learn and actually be relevant to the market. And I think that intention really helped them get through the storm that they were in.
We've spoken quite a bit now, I guess, about the creative side of things and maybe sort of where you and your co-founder come from and the vantage point that you bring into the space. I'm quite interested in the operational side of things. I mean, even barriers to entry in this market segment of the creative economy that we're talking about here. And also issues of transformation, but also operationally, how you organize yourself also might influence, you know, what the numbers look like at the end of the month and what that P&L looks like as well.
Well, efficiency. I come from an agency because, you know, creatives think that just because you're creative, you can be late and it's kind of like fun and stuff. So I think appointing the right people, especially in the account management and the project management, guides your creatives to say, okay, you've got a certain timeline, you know, because creativity is usually you know, it comes to you. So you need the right people, a balance of creativity and a balance of the suits, as we call it in our industry, that will make sure that the work is out on time and the efficiency and systems behind that. And that's very, very important. I think a lot of entrepreneurs in the creative space discount that, but it's the delivery and the efficiency of your agency is very, very important.
Let's talk about the cost of pitching. I mean, I remember, you know, speaking to you and even speaking to some of your colleagues within the industry about some of the big challenges, especially if you've got, you know, an agency that is trying to compete with some of the big names in the industry. And you might not have as deep pockets to sort of put together all of the resources, human or otherwise, to pitch effectively and respond to a brief from a client. Is that a barrier to entry? Does that constitute, I guess, a competitive issue in this particular industry?
I think it does as you go for the bigger accounts. But how we started pitching proactive work where we didn't necessarily want to be the main agency, but we saw a gap, whether it be inside, whether it be the way the brand was doing the digital work. So I think as you grow bigger, as we have, it becomes more costly because I think brands are looking for a more structured product. But I think when you see an opportunity in a brand, it's just the power of the idea at the beginning. But as you do scale up, it becomes a bit costly to pitch, especially for the bigger brands.
You got 2 offices now.
Yeah.
How long have you had that? And more importantly, what complexity does that introduce?
Look, I think it's finding the good people. We got a Cape Town office and our headquarters are in Joburg.
Sure.
But we're in the business of people. When you find the good people and you empower them to actually run with it, you attain success. We've grown by relying on others. And I think that's really been the recipe for our growth, to find the good people, find the people that are around the room that are more intelligent than us, that can take the business forward.
You speak about digital being a key part of how you deliver the work.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. What cost efficiencies does that bring into your model? That maybe the historic model of being a full service agency might have been different.
Look, it's moving with the consumer. People are on digital. People are consuming digital platforms. They're very active on digital. So you need a product that caters to that. Go to where the consumers are. So it's not necessarily more cost effective. I think it's just more efficient. Before it was almost like the poorer cousin of TV, and that's not the case. I think in the space that we're in now, you can do very complex things in digital. But I think the big thing about digital is that it's where the consumers are moving, and there's really exciting things around that space integrated with the main communication that we do.
Yeah, let's talk demand side briefly.
Yeah.
A lot of trends, a lot of changes happening on the part of brands themselves.
Yeah.
Budgets are shrinking.
Yeah.
Brands are becoming a bit more sort of skimpy in terms of what they spend on. How does that influence Avatar?
Look, you have to be efficient. Look, our model is a very entrepreneurial model. So when I'm working on a brand or the culture in the company is to make sure that we are cost effective in a way that adds value to the client. So we find a way to meet your objectives in that manner. So budgets are shrinking, but we have to find innovative ways to target the consumer. And also consumers are getting more sophisticated,
More discerning as well.
More discerning. What you could get away with 10, 15 years ago, you can't. I remember when I was younger, there was this ad on Ukhozi FM that says, "Umungayazi pine nut, awazi lutho." And we kind of believe that, if you don't know pine nut, you don't know anything. But now brands have to get into a collaborative space, because for the first time the consumer can actually talk back. When you put a message out, they can actually challenge. And we've seen consumers challenge brand positionings where they've had to actually change to say, no, actually you're not your brand promise. So cost efficiency, but actually understanding the change in the consumer mindscape as well.
I want us to pause there for a second, because I think you're raising something very important. In as much as, yes, you're trying to speak to a consumer who's going to push back, I think there's also been some structural changes in terms of the role that consumer plays. I mean, a lot of people are talking now about a prosumer. A consumer who is also co-creating and co-producing that brand story with the brand and contributing in that kind of way. And we'll come back just after the break to take a look at what that then means for the future of your own work and, of course, as you scale some of the work that you do. I'm in conversation with Veli Ngubane, is the co-founder and group managing director of full-service marketing agency, Avatar. And we're going to take a quick break now. But remember, you can engage with us, as always, on social media. Ask us your questions and tell us what you think on the socials. Our hashtag is hashtag Business Unusual, hashtag Newsroom Africa, Newsroom 405, I should rather say. And you can also tag me on Twitter on @AYTawik. I'm Ngubang there on the Twitter. And our official handle is @405business_. See you on the other side of this break. You're watching Business Unusual here with me, Ayabonga Cawe. It's a Mama I Made It Friday, and I'm in conversation with the co-founder and group managing director at Avatar, Veli Ngubeni, and Ngubani, I should say. Let me not say Ngubeni, because then maybe you would be Tammy's brother.
Cousin.
Kill me for that. But that being said, Veli, I mean, this point I was making before we went to the break about a prosumer. How does that influence how you deliver to clients and the service model that you have?
I think brands are more in a collaborative space, and they're more about experiences now. You know, advertising is moving to this beautiful merge with experiences. So how brands make you feel and how the consumer is influencing the direction. I think that's the next level of advertising, and that's what we are putting in all our brands. You know, how are we collaborating and how are we hearing? Because for the first time, people are volunteering insights. They're volunteering their brand like or their dislike. So as strategists, we need to look at that as well as data to say, how do we influence the brand's trajectory in that? Yeah.
Just, you know, as strategists, I guess the other part of that is, you know, the client education piece.
Yeah.
You work a lot with big brands, but one would think that you also have maybe smaller brands who are medium-sized businesses or even smaller businesses, where the task of educating the client about what this is going to do for their business and the impact that that's going to have on their business becomes a lot larger.
Yeah. Look, I think education, whether you're a big brand or a small brand, there's so many brands that are competing for the same space. So people knowing what your product is about, the causes, you know, what I found judging the lorries, and it's actually an international trend, is especially with the millennials. They're looking at what does your brand stand for besides what they're selling. So what is the cause that is behind your brand? So that's becoming more important to communicate, to say, we are this brand, but we also stand for this. And what is our stance to this particular topic? So brands are moving to that space a lot.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you've worked with an interesting set here of brands, and you know, I'm quite interested in what some of your work looks like in the public sector space, because one would think that there's always this distinction made between private sector and public sector, and you know, in terms of even like approval of briefs, how quickly you get feedback on some of the work that you're doing. Is there a functional difference there, or a business is a business, a client is a client?
Not really. You know, a business is a business and a client is a client. Now, as they grow bigger, they might have different needs. Yeah. But for an agency, we have to tailor-make and suit the client's needs and requirements. We work on Sanral very closely, and we love working on Sanral because
you're trying to make us pay tolls?
It's dynamic. Yeah. You know, I think from when we were appointed, I think we've become more engaged, and I think people are understanding that Sanral is not only about e-tolls, but about the bigger road network. I just come from Cape Town, where they drove electric cars from Joburg for the first ever to Cape Town, which is beautiful. So brands are brands, and you need as an agency to be able to adapt to their working style, and that's what we do. So besides us being contractors, we want to be partners, and we want to get into the business, understand how you work. So there's not a major difference. And if everyone around the table has got the common goal of making sure that that brand comes out even better and deliver great creative work, then it's all good.
It's quite interesting. I mean, I must say with Sanral that you've kind of changed the debate, as you say, away just from Sanral as the administrator of the e-tolls, but to Sanral as a connecting industry in our economy, linking you know, families with you know, people, and linking key sectors of the economy with the consumers as well. We've also seen some of the aerial shots that you guys have got in there. So quite an interesting campaign that you've done there. But you know, when you look at it now in hindsight, and you look at how the marketplace perceives Sanral prior to your own involvement, what conclusions do you arrive at?
It's important. So as brand practitioners, we have to look at the mood, have certain strategic objectives. And our view was that issues of the economy and the importance of a brand like Sanral in our daily lives. And I think people used to drive home, drive to Durban, drive to the Eastern Cape, and they'd almost disassociate that
you're driving on Sanral roads.
And I think even the road trip now just proved how beautiful and how much investments go into our roads network. So I love it when I look back at a brand, and I think I think traditionally we've gone for brands that we've had to change a lot of public perceptions, which is exciting for us because when people, as you said, get more education about what the brand is about, then they can decide. We've got people on social media now protecting us. And speaking and having those natural organic ambassadors. And that's a beautiful thing to get a brand to that stage.
Yeah. What does a day look like in this space, Vedi? I mean, you make it sound so nice, but I can, tell certainly from the experience of many people I know who work in this industry, the 14-hour days are a thing, and the hectic client briefs are also something that doesn't look as glamorous.
Yeah. You have to love what you do. I think it's the dedication. I grew up around people in the medical field. And I'd wonder, you've just come back, you're on call, but it's because they loved saving lives. Now, we love working on brands. So I think unless you love what you do, you won't survive in advertising. And I think that's why we make our offices so nice. You'll see agencies have got a lot of couches because a lot of people...
Got to take that nap.
You've got to take that nap. So it becomes part of your life. But because the results are so public, and I think as agencies, we're so competitive to make sure that our brand works. Because our stuff is very visual. People can see the adverts, they can see the billboard. So we've got a very visual art. So, but it starts with passion and loving what you do. And unless you do, you won't survive a long time in this industry.
I'm also quite interested in the industry strengthening work that you're doing. Right? It might be, building a pipeline of brand professionals for the next generation through the support work and, the advisory and oversight work that you do in the training space. It might even be, playing in the recognition space, the awards, judging some of that. Why do you see that as important? And more importantly, how has that work complemented what you do inside the agency and some of the insights that you take inside the agency?
So it's about unleashing this creative economy. I went to UCT, I had to study law because creativity was always seen as a risk, So for me, I always want to be that example to people. I think it's only when I got my first house and a car that even my family was like, okay, maybe this creative
now you can go and do whatever.
So I think educating even parents about that there's a career in creativity, making adverts. I don't think it was careers that were publicly available in the past. So my work, especially sitting on the advisory board as chairman of Red and Yellow, is to get more especially black students. I've got a blog that I run on Mark Lives, which is Young, Gifted and Killing It, which showcases black creatives that make the work that you see. Because when you see an advert, you don't know who's behind it. So to see that, it's a boy from Umhlabli and it's a boy from Soweto, hey man, I can also do this. So ours is to be a beacon and people to look at Avatar and say, okay, if these guys, one guy from Spreadview, one guy from rural KZN can do it, I can also do it, to encourage more participation as a sustainable career. So whether it's on the Transformation Council and IAB, whether it's the board positions that I serve on, is to encourage and promote that this is a sustainable career that one can pursue. You don't necessarily have to be udokotela.
There's also an interesting element to that. I think even when we talk about the future of work, there are sort of the repetitive, mundane and day-to-day tasks that are easily automatable. I think that's where we might lose a lot of the jobs. If you look at where the literature suggests we're going to lose the jobs. And then there's also, I guess, the more critical thinking, the creative side of things where, to be honest, you can't really teach a robot how to be as creative as a human being would be, because there's a lot that goes into that that I think only human beings can do. How does that then influence, I guess, how we think about the economy going forward? Because one would think that surely industries like the creative economy should be leading the charge and saying, hey, this future of work is also about saying, let's do away with some of the repetitive and mundane stuff so we can dedicate a bit more time to creative pursuits, critical thinking, to try and take humanity forward.
I always say the creative economy and entrepreneurship is probably the two industries that will be last affected by the changing economy. Because you have to make a plan. when things get automated. And creativity is very closely linked to entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is about striving in the more difficult times. I see people complain about the economy, but I always believe that in those economies where it's the hardest hit by change, entrepreneurs start to strive, because entrepreneurs use creativity to find solutions. So creativity will always last. I think there's been rumors that robots will end up being able to do it, but I think it will be the last to get affected. You know, there's this computer Watson from IBM.
Yes, from IBM,
That is said to be also creative. But I think as long as entrepreneurship is around, and as long as we have problems in the world to solve, creativity and entrepreneurship will be safe.
Yeah. Avatar, what does it look like 10 years from now? You're turning over what, 200 million now?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
So ours is to build a business that doesn't need us. From when we started, my business partner and I said, as soon as Avatar doesn't need us and we can go on holiday and let a business run, we've built a sustainable business. So we want, and that's why we haven't sold Avatar, because we want it to be a South African business owned by South Africans and owned by fellow Africans. So we want to grow into the rest of the continent. That's the short-term goal that we want. But we love pushing boundaries. And I think the more we push boundaries, the more we want to grow, and the more we want to represent brands across the continent. So I see it as a continentally strong business and a global business. And that's what we're building. We're a bit crazy, but being crazy has gotten us this far, and we can't kind of enjoy pushing boundaries. So hopefully in 10 years' time, the business won't need us as much as it does now. But to grow into the rest of the continent is a priority for us.
Awesome. Mov, let's leave it there, my brother.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure having you here on Business Unusual. Wish you all of the best, and send our regards to the team.
Thank you so much.
That there was Veli Ngubane. He's the co-founder and group managing director at Avatar, taking us through his own personal journey and that of the business that they've built from humble beginnings with 2,000 Rand in startup capital and now turning over 200 million in revenue. And it's a wrap from us here at the Business Unusual team for the week. We're back with you next week with more business news and sector insights between 1 and 2 p.m. Stay tuned to Newsroom Africa, channel 405.